Well, hello there, motherfuckers. And I need to talk about Bill Maher and Stan Lee and Bill Maher's terrible blog that he made in reference to Stan Lee. Now, I held off on this for a while for this very reason, because I wanted to see what Bill Maher's response was going to be to the whole fallout of him writing this particular blog. So let's see what Bill said. So, you guys already know the deal with Bill. He's all the way to the left. He hates Trump. He's been very, very cynical. I mean, all his show has been mostly is a lot of anti-Trump. And like I'm saying, I understand that a lot of my subscribers, they might not like Donald Trump, and I totally get that. I kind of see why people wouldn't like him, but that's neither here nor there, because on this channel, I think at the end of the day, I make a lot of points on here that a lot of people could agree with, whether they're liberal, whether they're conservative. As long as you've got common sense, I think you're gonna find, usually we find common ground most of the time on this channel. So let's take a look here. So, Stan Lee, he's iconic. He's brought a lot of happiness into people's lives. He's put smiles on children's faces. A lot of people can make that claim, but Stan Lee could actually certify that claim. And of course, most people get really brave when somebody passes, because the person obviously can't fight back, can't say anything. I mean, if he said it when he was alive, he'd be talking to a 95-year-old man anyway, so that wouldn't really be a fair fight to begin with. But anyway, so let's take a look at Bill Maher and what he had to say about Stan Lee. Even though you're going to see in the video I'm going to play later on with his response to the backlash that fans had due to this blog, you're going to see that he's going to say that it's not about Stan Lee, it's about comic books in general and people that read them. So this was on November 17th. The name of the blog is Adulting. This is off his official website. And guys, I always recommend, whenever you go to look for news or anything about something, go right to the source. Always read that person's post, watch their video. Never take, another person's take, because it could always be misconstrued. So usually what I do, especially when it comes to making these videos, and we've been making more and more of them as of late, because you guys seem to enjoy it, and I appreciate your enjoyment of them. But you got to go right for the source. You got to go and you got to watch the actual content, so people don't put words in that person's mouth. They're not just trying to drag them through the dirt. It's not yellow journalism, because that type of stuff, it will, mess with your opinion. And you don't want to get indoctrinated more than other people do nowadays. So let's take a look at Adulting here. I'll read you the article. It's very, very short. So stay with me here. So here we go, Adulting. The guy who created Spider-Man and the Hulk has died, and America is in mourning. Deep, deep mourning for a man who inspired millions to, I don't know, watch a movie, I guess. You could already tell, the tonality of this is so pretentious. He's already being condescending, looking down on you to watch a movie, I guess. I'm so smart. I'm such an elitist. Someone on Reddit posted, "I'm so incredibly grateful I lived in a world that included Stan Lee. Personally, I'm grateful I live in a world that included oxygen and trees, but to each his own." And here's the funny thing. It's I understand, because I have some experience in journalism, in college and everything. So, I've written for the college paper. So I know all about writing articles and everything. And you always want to, make things on a grander scale, so people keep reading your articles. So, but basically what he's saying here is, this guy, it was like he's worshiping Stan Lee, and he's happy to be alive. He never said that he lived for Stan Lee. He's just saying he was grateful to live in a world with people as beautiful as Stan Lee. That Stan Lee was positive. He never got like super political. He wanted unity, people just to read his fucking comics, and not just he was there not to talk down to people like Bill Maher is doing. He just wanted to entertain people and put smiles on their faces. What a terrible thing. Now, I have nothing against comic books. I read them now and then when I was a kid, and I was all out of Hardy Boys. But the assumption everyone had back then, both the adults and the kids, was that comics were for kids, and when you grew up, you moved on to big boy books without the pictures. That's true to a certain extent. I will say that based on, what my father has told me. Because the thing is, you gotta understand, I don't know, your guys is like the age of your parents. But my dad is 61. My mom is 58 years old. So they grew up in a time kind of before comic books got really super popular and really exploded big time. Like what was kind of like in the 60s when, they really started making a lot of cartoons. And there were cartoons of Superman and everything. But, things take a little bit of time to adjust. So, and there was things going on back then. Let's not forget that when Batman and Superman were created, that, we were at war. We were involved in World War II a few years after the creation of those comic books. So people were maybe a bit more adult. So I'm saying, like, there is a little bit of credit, that I will give to Bill Maher. There is some accuracy here. But to say that, like, you're not an adult because you don't read, books without pictures, it's like, even the way how he describes it. Oh, I read normal books such as novels and textbooks and history books and, biographies without, it's like what you read is not necessarily going to make you smarter. Even Thomas Jefferson had said that. You could read newspapers all day, but all you're doing is reading other people's opinions and perspectives. If you don't have an interesting perspective and a sense of common sense and a worldview of your very own, then you're going to be a very boring, drab, uncreative person. And judging by Bill Maher's recent opinions and shows on HBO, he is getting pretty drab, he is getting pretty boring, and he is pretty uncreative because every single show is, liberal talking points, bash Trump. Now, I used to be a Bill Maher fan. He used to be interesting. He used to sometimes, really be on fire, and he used to be politically incorrect, and I used to, enjoy that about him. The fact that he was actually thrown off of, I believe it was the ABC network, due to him making a joke about 9/11, the thing is, it was a touchy time. So, that was kind of just, Bill Maher might have went too far. But the guy still had the balls to make a joke. And, I stuck with him. I thought, okay, I'm not going to vilify the guy. He's not saying that he wished 9/11 happened. But all he was just doing was kind of making an innocent joke. Because the show was called Politically Incorrect, after all. So it's not like you should expect to hear something, that's PC on there. So he goes on the right, but then 20 years ago or so, something happened. Adults decided they didn't have to give up kid stuff, and so they pretended comic books were actually sophisticated literature. And because America has over 4,500 colleges, which means we need more professors than we have smart people, some dumb people got to be professors by writing theses with titles like Otherness and Heterodoxy in the Silver Surfer. And now when adults are forced to do grown-up things like buy auto insurance, they call it adulting and act like it's some giant struggle. Now, I will say, when you break this down and everything, he's basically saying the maturity of America. See, there is actually a lot of credit to what he says. Now, this is the thing. If you find things like this to be inconveniences in life and everything, they are. But there's no problem with reading comic books. There's no problem with, doing things that might be popular with children. There's something called nostalgia. There's something about being called a big kid. And some of these people that, read comic books, they will like give their old comic books and toys to their children. And, they'll pass on their likes and their interests to them. Hell, I know that there's a lot of music I listen to, and even with comic books, like my love of Spider-Man, for example, that I owe that a lot to my father and introducing me to these characters and everything, so a lot of that nostalgia gets passed down. And remember, I'm talking about my dad that's from a much, much earlier generation than a lot of parents nowadays. So, there is credit to what he's saying. The only time that I would say that this is valid, though, where we should stop with the comic book reading and stop with the nostalgia, is if you have kids and you're not being a very good father, or you're a mother and you're not being a very good mother, and you're neglecting your children in order to play video games and read comic books, and you're not giving them the proper upbringing that they deserve to have, then Bill Maher is correct. Now, the thing is, he does also have a lot of credit that is owed to him for what he's saying about professors, because there are a lot of professors, and that is true. Like, to have a professor kind of write a thesis on Silver Surfer and an essay and shit like that, that's a bit goofy, to say the least, especially when you're at a high college level, unless that's the class that he was in, where it's maybe about teaching about stuff like this, like an art class or whatever it may be. It's funny though, because Bill Maher is like a liberal, and liberals will always say that, everybody must go to college. College is the only way. It's do or die. College, college, college. And, they do this. They promote college all the time, and it doesn't even, guarantee anybody everything. There's a lot of unemployed people out there that have fancy college degrees, but they can't use them because they're in things like, gender studies and, sociology and philosophy, all those garbage things. People will pour $40,000 down the drain a year to go to these colleges, get themselves in debt. And, so when you see things like this, that is perfectly understandable. The only thing is here, it's the timing also. That Stan Lee just died, and now you're going to take a crack at Silver Surfer, one of his creations. It just makes you look like an asshole. You could have wrote this article when Stan Lee was alive, but it seems like you had a lot of pent-up aggression. So let's finish it off here. I'm not saying we've necessarily gone stupider. The average Joe is smarter in a lot of ways than he was in, say, the 1940s, when A Big Night Out was a Three Stooges short and a Carmen Miranda musical. The problem is we're using our smarts on stupid stuff. I don't think it's a huge stretch to suggest that Donald Trump could only get elected in the country that thinks comic books are important. And it's really funny because a lot of SJWs, and you see what's going on at Marvel and DC, where there's a lot of SJWs, and they don't like Donald Trump. That's the funny thing about this. There's a lot of comic book writers and people in Marvel that have outright posted to Twitter that they hate Trump, and they think that all his supporters are, racist and sexist and all that. So, you're not even putting two and two together. Like, you could have wrote a much more informed article if you put in all of these other sources. Like, you don't even know what's going on right now in the comic book world. Do you realize that most comic book publishers and writers and artists are far left? That's why, a lot of these, like, conservatives and people that don't, believe the way that the far left does right now, and all these, social justice warriors, You didn't even bother to research this, that many of these people are writing this into the comic books, that they're changing the genders of certain characters, changing the races of certain characters, in order to diversify comics. And they even hired one girl that was already fired at DC because she was there to promote diversity among the DC Comics staff on various projects. So, it's like, that's the end of your blog. It was 3 paragraphs, and that was the end of it. There was no research that went into this shit. And it's funny what you're saying. It's like, you're saying that this is the comic book age, that people are obsessed with comic books, and this, elected the incompetent oaf Donald Trump as president, Orange Man bad. But, you're saying that people are smarter now in a lot of ways than they were in the 1940s, which I totally disagree with, because you almost had me there, because I believe that people were a lot smarter back in the 1940s. They did have a much greater sense of responsibility. There was a lot of potential in this article to have a statement that actually talked about responsibility, and maybe sometimes we might have to put our interests aside, to make sure that our children are taken care of, and that we have our priorities straight in life. So, there was a lot of potential here in these 3 paragraphs, but in each and every paragraph, you fucked up. You fucked up really bad, and you basically said that everybody that reads comic books is stupid. And that basically, all this did was not make the people that read comic books look stupid. It made you look stupid. And so when you were challenged by thousands of people on this, you went on Larry King and you said this.
Bill, I got to bring this up. And you got in a little controversy over this. When Stan Lee died, you weren't criticizing him. You were criticizing the comic concept, right?
Of course.
Why did people get mad at you?
First of all, I just found out about this.
Found out that people got mad?
Yeah. I'm so glad that I don't follow social media like that. Every stupid thing
they
that
had
people
to tell me today about
lose their shit about. Yes. But talk about making my point for me. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know very much about Stan Lee, and it certainly wasn't a swipe at Stan Lee. It was.
You still liked him. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, of course, fine. I'm agnostic on Stan Lee. I don't read comic books. I didn't even read them when I was a child.
You said that you did a little bit.
Culture that thinks that comic books and comic book movies are profound meditations on the human condition is a dumb culture. And for people to get mad at that just proves my point.
That's
never miss a beat.
That's not even what you said actually in the article. That's a profound meditation. When did anybody say that? There might have been a couple of screwballs out there in the comic book land that might believe that they're like the holy grail and they're a telltale sign of everything. We got a comment here. Sometimes these Google notifications are a little bit annoying, but anyway, I have them set up on here. But no one is saying that they're profound books that are on the level of the Bible or, certain historical works or certain great novels. No one ever said that. Comic books are just an escape. People enjoy them. People like to, talk to their friends about them. They're entertaining. They'll tell them, it's just like with books. What's the difference? You read a fictional book. It doesn't matter if you read To Kill a Mockingbird or you read the latest issue of X-Men. You're reading something, okay? So, you know, one may teach a story, but then there's books like X-Men that preached against racism that were, you know, very timely. And, you know, they might have changed a lot of different minds. And I'm sure it did have an influence on a lot of people. I'm not sure if everybody picked up on that back in the 1960s. But comic books, you know, they could be deep at a certain extent, but no one's ever really saying that that's what they are, that, like, comic books are the be-all, end-all of literature. Like, you know, you gotta read these comic books or you're not well informed. There's a lot of people out there that take their comic books a lot too, you know, a little bit too seriously. But there's people that take video games way too seriously. There are people that take politics way too seriously. There's people that take a lot of things way too seriously. You can criticize anybody for anything. And Bill Maher does have a valid point. At certain junctures of this article, but or of this blog, but he undoes almost all of them. And then he goes on Larry King, and he pretty much re-solidifies all the negative points that he had in this blog. He basically doubled down on all the negative points, and he didn't even basically say, you know, he could have saved himself here by saying, all I'm saying is that maybe society should, you know, kind of think outside the box sometimes, and maybe we could right more wrongs if maybe, you know, we kind of knew what was going on in the world a little bit more, that we kind of got outside the bubble a little bit more, thought a little bit outside the box, and stop arguing about what's better, the Marvel film universe or the DC film universe, cinematic universe. You know, that's basically what he could have said here. Just all he had to do was rearrange a few words and phrases, but no, it just pretty much was a slap in the face to all people that read comic books. And he shot himself in the foot. He put his foot in his mouth again, a guy that basically said the N-word, you know, and then he had to walk it back, you know, and bring Ice Cube on his show and all that. So, you know, there you go. This guy has been a runaway train as of late, and he's really going to undo himself. This little blog right here, a lot of people are probably going to stop watching his show. I mean, he's already lost a considerable amount of viewers on his HBO show Real Time, and he could probably look forward to the fact that he'll probably be losing a lot more. So, you know, he might want to think about that the next time that he, you know, takes a swipe at the legacy of Stan Lee. You know, the thing is that you start off your article talking about Stan Lee, so there is definitely a relation to Stan Lee here. Whether or not it's like about him directly or indirectly, you're still talking about his legacy and how people looked up to him, and, you know, how they went about celebrating his legacy. And, you know, that's exactly why people are taking offense to this article, and rightfully so. I'm here defending you to a certain extent, but it's very hard to do so based on that response you had on Larry King as well. So, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope, you know, you liked some of the things I had to say here. If you did, please hit a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit a thumbs down and tell me why. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you get all the notifications when I post my new videos. Check out some of the content I have posted here. And thank you for watching, guys. Until next time.